So this lecture is about the family Solanaceae. It's commonly known as the nightshade family, and it has tons of food plants, ornamentals, medicinal plants, and also lots of poisonous plants. So it's a really interesting family to talk about. And as far as the distribution, it's mostly global, as you can see in the picture here on the bottom right. And there are about 100 genera and about 2,500 species in this family. So just to look at some edible members of the family, we have tomato, that is the species Solanum lycopersicum. So here is the red bell pepper that we're all familiar with. This is from the species Capsicum annuum, and interestingly enough, the jalapeno is the same species. So these are just cultivated varieties that we've bred for different purposes, essentially. And here's just kind of a silly slide of a transverse section of a bell pepper in which we see kind of a ghouly looking face. So not just bell peppers and jalapenos, but in fact, all peppers come from the family Solanaceae. And just a reminder here, peppers are, if we want to classify the type of fruit, peppers are berries. Potato, also a big food crop in this family. And even though, the potatoes grow underground, it is not actually root material, it is actually stem material. And you can tell this quite easily because the potatoes have eyes. And so what the eyes represent are actually nodes in the stem. So of course, if you leave a potato out on your counter for too long, well, it starts to grow new branches and stems essentially from the nodes or the eyes. So stem material. The petunia, which is a common cultivated ornamental in this family, which we should all be familiar with. Atropa belladonna here has kind of an interesting story attached to it. So the enticing berries that you see here, they're actually quite toxic, but they were in fact once used as a cosmetic in order to induce pupil dilation in women. So the specific epithet here, belladonna, meaning beautiful woman, is in reference to the pupil dilation that was achieved through use of this plant. Another extremely economically important plant in the Solanaceae is tobacco. So this is in the genus Nicotiana, and here we have a field of tobacco and the tobacco plant here on the right. As far as the habit, the Solanaceae are generally herbs, but there are also members that are shrubs and trees and also lianas. And I don't know if we've gone over this before, but lianas are essentially woody vines. And one thing that we don't see in this family, which we've kind of seen in a few families throughout our semester so far, is we do not have the presence of milky latex. Leaves in the Solanaceae are usually alternate and simple and ex-stipulate, so no stipules. Of course, as I'm sure you've noticed throughout the semester, these recognition characters don't always hold true for every member of the family, so this is kind of just a majority rule thing here, and there are some members where we do see some compound leaves or opposite leaf arrangement. Shown here is kind of your classic example of a flower in the Solanaceae. So they are perfect and actinomorphic, so radially symmetric, and the corolla is usually plicate, meaning folded. So you can see the petals here look like they could use some ironing, essentially. In terms of the shape, the corolla is often rotate to funnel form or salvo form. So here on the right, we see your nice classic rotate shape. And the anthers are often connivent. So I think we went over this last week, but connivent means placed very, very close together, but not actually connate, so not actually fused. And of course, in these flowers here, you can see that the anthers are placed right next to each other and are kind of tightly pressed around the style here, but they are not actually fused to one another. So we often see connivent anthers in the flowers. Taking a look at the floral formula here, you can see that we have 5 Maris flowers with a syn-sepalous calyx and a syn-petalous corolla with 5 stamens as well. And you can see that these stamens are epipetalous because we have fusion between the corolla and the andrecium. So we went over this last week as well, and epipetalous stamens is an andrecium condition in which the bases of the filaments are fused to the corolla. Taking a look at the gynecium, we have a syncarpous gynecium composed of 2 fused carpels with a superior ovary. So we can also have sometimes 3 carpels in this family as well. So in this view, you can get a really good sense of the connivent anthers that are tightly pressed against the style, but not actually fused. And you can also see the epipetalous stamens here, where the base of the filament is attached to the corolla. And one other cool fact about this group is that the gynecium has axial placentation. And you can really see this when you, say cut a bell pepper in cross section. You can really see that axial placentation. So just one last example of flowers in this family. This is in the genus Physalis, which are commonly known as the ground cherries. And here we have more of a campanulate-shaped corolla rather than our rotate corolla seen in the last example. But we do see kind of all the same recognition characters. So our corolla is sympetalous and plicate, so kind of folded. And we have, let's see, epipetalous stamens here with a superior ovary. Our sepals are connate as well, so symsepalous. And we have free anthers. Here they aren't connivent, but they're unfused, just as we see in all the rest of the members. One last cool fact about flowers in the Solanaceae is that in the genus Solanum, which we have pictured here, this is a flower in the genus Solanum, the anthers actually dehisce by these terminal pores. So this is actually where all the pollen comes out. Very interesting. So if we take a look at the fruits in the Solanaceae, we oftentimes see berries, such as tomatoes and peppers and tomatillos. We also see septicidal capsules. So a good example of this would be the tobacco plant that has a capsule. And for the fruits here, we often have a calyx that is persistent. So it remains on the fruit as it matures. So here we have a cross-section of a tomato berry. And you can see right away that it has 2 locules, one here and one here, and we can clearly see this axial placentation. In this locule, all the seeds are attached at a placenta located at the axis, and likewise in this locule, we have one placenta here located at the axis at which all the seeds are attached. Eggplant, just another example of an edible berry in this family, and you can see we have a persistent calyx here as well. Some little tomatillos here, which again are another example of a berry in the family, and again we see this persistent calyx that remains on the fruit even as it ripens. So the genus Datura has capsules, and if you take a look, you can see it is breaking open along the septa here, so a septicidal capsule. All right, so before we just look at some pretty pictures, let's do a quick review of the recognition characters for the Solanaceae. So generally, the leaves are simple and alternate. We have a syn-sepalous calyx and a syn-petalous corolla. Our corolla is often plicate as well, so seemingly folded. The corolla, in terms of shape, is often rotate all the way to salver form. We often see connivent anthers, so anthers that are not actually fused but are placed very close together. And then in terms of fruits, we usually see berries in capsules and a persistent calyx. So for the next few slides, we're just going to look at some members of the Solanaceae that occur in Colorado. So here we have Solanum triflorum, and this is a widespread native, although it has some weedy tendencies. So you may have seen this around, but you may not have paid it much attention because it does tend to kind of grow or appear a bit like a weed. Solanum jamesii here is commonly referred to as the wild potato, and you can definitely see this enlarged tuber here. So again, that is not root material, but is stem material. Quincula lobata has this gorgeous rotate flower, and the common name here is Chinese lantern because the berry has this really cool persistent calyx, much like the tomatillo, and kind of gives the fruit the appearance of a lantern. So here's kind of a weird one found in the area. It's not native, it's actually introduced. And if you take a look, you can see that the corolla is actually slightly zygomorphic. So we have kind of this little gap here, making it such that we don't have an actinomorphic flower, but a slightly zygomorphic flower. And then if you look at the fruits here, we see these really cool capsules running all the way up the inflorescence. So this here is commonly known as coyote tobacco, and it is, the one tobacco species that does occur in Colorado. And here we see a really nice example of this funnel form or salver form flower, as opposed to that rotate flower that we've seen in a lot of the examples here. And of course, we do have this capsule as the fruit in Nicotiana. So this here is Datura, and it is probably my favorite plant of all time. So one of the common names given to this plant is moonflower, and that is a reference to these really large, gorgeous flowers that it has, and they bloom for just a single night. So they open up at dusk, just with this gorgeous citrus smell, and by the following dawn, they're done. And so this is a really cool genus because it has a lot of poisonous and hallucinogenic properties, and some members of this genus have been used in Native American rituals for centuries.